I want to talk to you about the conference. I want to talk to you about the health of your party. But can we deal with a couple of pretty pressing news stories of the moment? First, that Sarah Everard tragedy that has been so shocking throughout this week, and the Met's response in particular. Are you disturbed by revelations all across the Sunday papers this morning that Wayne Couzens guarded MPs, guarded you and your female colleagues in the House of Commons?
Yes, I am deeply disturbed by them, and I think the whole nation feels disturbed and feels a sense of tragedy at what happened to Sarah Everard. Many people, I certainly know that part of London well. It could have happened to any one of our loved ones, and that's why I think it's absolutely essential that we get to the bottom of those failings. And I know, for example, in relation to Parliament, the Speaker has urgently written to the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police to investigate this properly.
Well, you want to get to the bottom of them. It doesn't necessarily appear that the Metropolitan Police share your concerns because, of course, we've got police regulators looking into all these, but so far, the Commissioner of the Met has not in any way promised to look at their vetting, look at any of their procedures that allowed a rapist and a murderer to get through.
Well, as you say, there's the independent investigation going on. I know that the Home Secretary has, of course, been in constant touch with the Met Commissioner, and I think it's right that we allow the Met Commissioner to get to the bottom of this. I'm quite sure the Met Commissioner will get to the bottom of this. It's a clear problem on the face of it that there are these oversights, and I think it's right that she should do so.
She hasn't said she would, though. She hasn't said, I'm going to look at my procedures for oversight and vetting. It's a really straightforward sentence.
Well, I would expect her to do so.
OK. I think the nation may agree with that sentiment. Can I ask you on a slightly wider question, if you like? It has been suggested this week that there is such a thing as male privilege. And it's defined by basically some men, only some men, behaving towards women in a way that women would never behave towards men. And society in general tolerates that. Does male privilege exist?
Well, clearly, historically, men have been advantaged over women. That's why there's been a campaign that's been very successful in driving equality. I think we've made great leaps forward in terms of driving equality. Clearly, there is more to be done.
Right, OK. The question, though, of course, was, does male privilege exist?
Well, as I said to you, I think male privilege has existed historically in the sense that men have had far more opportunities than women. There's been great campaigns, whether that's in terms of equal wages or that's in terms of in terms of other movements to improve equal opportunity for women, whether that's maternity pay and all those other things. I think it's a bit too simplistic to simply talk in terms of male privilege. I don't think, for example, if you're an unemployed man on a council estate outside Newcastle, you're going to feel particularly privileged. So I think that's a bit of a crass term. But however, historically, it has been the case that men have had more opportunities than women, and society has rightly addressed that.
Let's turn to the fuel crisis, the petrol panic. It's about to enter its third week. Quite extraordinary fact, really. Not great timing, obviously, with your party conference today. There is improvement in some areas across vast swathes of the country. I have to tell you, my part of the country, Sussex yesterday, I couldn't find a petrol station to fill up with for miles. London, the southeast, it's incredibly hard. In fact, it's probably getting worse. Can you give us a time, a week, a month, when you're finally going to be able to say to the British people, we're going to get you the petrol you want?
Oh, well, I think as your question alluded to, it is a mixed picture across the country. So, for example, in Manchester, certainly outside of central Manchester, I passed plenty of petrol stations that were empty and had petrol in them. So the situation is stabilising and improving in some parts of the country. Clearly, there is a major problem still in London and the southeast. That's why, for example, we are deploying army resources from Monday. 200 Army personnel will be helping to deliver those resources. It goes alongside all the other work that we're doing. So over time, we would expect the situation to improve.
Right, it's the time I'm most looking for here, because there are people up and down the country furious about this. Can you say it will finish next week? Can you say it will finish next month? Or are we going to wait till Christmas?
Well, I completely understand and appreciate people's anger and frustration and fury. I've had the same challenges myself where I live, and I don't underestimate that for a moment. I can't give you an absolute cast iron timeline for it, but what I can say is if you look across the picture of the whole nation. For example, in Manchester, Monday, Tuesday, there were major problems here. There are far fewer problems here now than there were. And I hope that as we get the additional resources from the army in place, as all the other measures that have been announced come into force, we will see that situation improving also in London and the South East.
OK, you've just changed jobs, but you have been in the Cabinet for a number of years. Do you remember when the Cabinet first discussed HGV driver shortages?
I can't recall off the top of my head, but certainly within the past month we had an extensive discussions about supply chain challenges. But obviously, you have to observe the stricture that we're not supposed to talk about private cabinet
you might not feel the need to. I can tell you I have had that conversation with some of your Cabinet colleagues, and they tell me that the Cabinet had a full-blown discussion about HGV driver shortages in July. Do you remember that discussion?
I'm sorry, Tom, I'm just not going to comment on private conversations that happened in Cabinet.
Right. Well, you won't deny it happened, and I can tell you, it's my understanding that it certainly did. We're now October. That's 3 months that the Cabinet has been discussing this, and yet still we're in this mess. Is there really nothing the government could have done between July and October, or quite frankly, last year on October, when we knew these HGV driver shortages existed, to stop the mess we're currently in?
Well, we have taken action. I could list 24 different measures that we have taken. Well, actually, the situation has been improving outside of London and the South East in the way that I described. That is why we're putting more resources in to test more people. That's why we've suspended competition policy in relation to petrol outlets. That's why we have extended the amount of time that you can have a driver's license before you have to have it renewed. I hope that the effect of all these cumulative measures will be, as we've seen outside of London, the situation improving, that will continue across the rest of the country.
Okay. It's not just petrol tanker drivers, as you know. There is a supply chain crisis up and down the land. There's a labour shortage crisis as well. Butchers, thousands of healthy piglets are about to be slaughtered, we believe, this week, unless something can be done to stop that. Fruit pickers, abattoir workers, brickies, a whole range of trades we're short of. In fact, there's a record 1.1 million vacancies in the economy. The Prime Minister was tackled on this morning, also on the Andrew Marr programme, about potentially 120,000 pigs being slaughtered this week. Let's just have a quick listen to what he said.
So you don't have a short-term answer. And, well, you don't have a short-term answer. So when people see pictures of all those pigs being killed in farms and incinerated rather than being sold for food, sausages and
they're also going to be killed. I think people need to understand what we can't do is, in all these sectors, simply go back to the tired, failed old model, reach for the lever called uncontrolled immigration, get people in at low wages,
there will be problems, and that's...
Prime Minister went on to say there will be a period of adjustment as you move, understandably, because that's the government's policy and that is what the British people voted for, as you move from free movement, imported cheap labour, if you like, to a higher wage economy. The question I think people are asking this morning, Oliver, is why haven't you done more to sort out that skill shortage? Why have you not done more to skill up that workforce when you knew since 2016 cheap imported labour was not going to arrive? Same as the fuel crisis, isn't it? You knew this was coming, you just haven't done your jobs.
Well, I don't agree with that characterisation at all, Tom. And actually, if you're talking about skills shortages in the agricultural sector, I know that the Agriculture Secretary, George Juice, has taken this very seriously. That is why, for example, we have had seasonal agricultural worker visas extended for the poultry industry. We've had them extended to the fruit and veg picking industry. In terms of skills in the UK itself, we're investing record amounts of money in our schools and our wider skills network. But as the Prime Minister said, there will be an adjustment. And by the way, I think it is, frankly, I say this as somebody who voted Remain in the referendum. I think people who voted to leave expected a change, and one of the changes they expected was for us to control immigration. And in controlling immigration, it is the case that there won't be that huge supply of low-cost, unskilled migrant labour that we had from Eastern Europe previously, which over time will mean that wages go up in these sectors. And I think it is probably the change that people wanted.
And you know, I'm not disagreeing with you that was the premise of my question. The question was, why is there this period of adjustment, which means labour shortages, means pigs being slaughtered, it means no HGV drivers to deliver petrol? Why could the government simply not have planned this a bit better? You have had 5 years' notice.
Well, first of all, we've always clear that would be a period of adjustment. That's something we said all the way through the Brexit process. But secondly, we have been planning and taking action. We've taken action in the ways that I've described with seasonal agricultural worker visas. We've taken action in terms of making sure that we have better investment in skills and in further education. So we've both put action in up until now, and we are taking action as we speak. For example, with the army drivers coming into the petrol stations, driving those fuel trucks from Monday morning.
Okay, people just have to suck it up. Period of adjustment means nothing on the shelves, no petrol, but you voted for it, so it will clear up in 6 months to a year's time. That's what you're saying.
Tom, that's an extraordinary characterisation of what I've just said. It's not what I've said at all, and I've outlined the many measures that we are taking to ensure that we minimise the disruption for people.
Shall we move on to conference? I don't think I'm going to get any further with you on that one. Here we are in Manchester Central. Here are all your banners everywhere. They say Build Back Better. There's 2 hanging from the ceiling above our heads as we speak. Getting on with the job. Does that mean we're actually finally going to find out what levelling up means in practice after 2 years of soundbites about it?
Well, we are delivering levelling up in practice. And by the way, isn't it marvellous to be back at conference in person? It's the first time since that 2019 election. There's, in fact, 10,000 people here at this conference, showing how, as we come out of COVID, thanks to our vaccine programme, we're able to do these events in person again. In terms of levelling up, just take one example, broadband. We went from a situation where we had this very fast, so-called gigabit-capable broadband. Only about 4% of the country had it when the Prime Minister came in. We're now up to 50%, be 60% by the end of the year. And what does that mean? That means that across the whole country, all parts of the country are able to access really fast broadband, which spreads those economic opportunities around the whole of the UK. Take the same thing in relation to infrastructure, where we'll be outlining plans for additional infrastructure. We are actually delivering on that.
Broadband, however, I remember you getting yourselves elected in 2019, saying 100% of the country would have superfast broadband. You've now downgraded that to 85%. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Well, that we gave a projection of where we thought we were, but we've I think, Tom, surely even a hardened journalist like you could say that going from 4% to 40% to 60% by the end of the year is pretty good progress in a fairly short period of time.
Glass half full, glass half empty. Let's get on to those infrastructure announcements, though, because the Prime Minister dropped a hint yesterday about Northern Powerhouse Rail coming in the next few days. What can we expect on that?
Well, you'll have to wait for the announcement. We are, as part of levelling up, we've always been clear that we want to make sure we have infrastructure going to all parts of the country, and particularly areas of the north that in the past have not had the same levels of investment as London and the South East.
Now, you'll be aware, not all of your brethren, not all of your fellow Conservative MPs are coming to Manchester overjoyed at the Prime Minister's big state, big spending, interventionist, new tourism, red Wall-ism, if you can coin a phrase for it. Do you concede that there is still a job to be done to sell that vision to your own party?
Yes, and I think that's why the theme of this conference is getting on with the job. We need to demonstrate to people that the people who put their trust in us, who put their trust in us in 2019, who voted for us in places where they'd never voted for us before, we're actually going to get on with the job and deliver. And I think what you'll see during this conference is announcements and speeches that explain how we are doing exactly that.
But voters, I think, might be rather pleased to hear what you're doing to invest in the north, to level up, if you can actually define what that might mean, perhaps with Northern Powerhouse Rail. It's your own MPs. It's your own MPs on the front page of The Observer, slightly left-leaning newspaper, saying how on earth can we level up by cutting taxes for the poor. Those are the people you really need to work on in this conference.
Well, I think you will see in this conference the evidence of us getting on with the job and getting on with levelling up.
Jack.
Oliver, part of your job is to get the party election ready at the next election. Extraordinary poll in your own paper here, the Sunday Telegraph, saying the Tories have now fallen behind Labour in terms of whether people trust you on raising taxes. Do you trust Labour Conservatives more on keeping taxes low for working people? More people trust Labour now than the Conservatives on that. How does that make you feel?
Well, first of all, sadly, I should say the Telegraph is not my own paper, and I'm sure it has its own.
It's the Prime Minister's paper.
It has its own independent editorial stance that I see every day in it. But on the fundamental point, I have always been a low-tax Conservative. I believe in low tax, and I know from my many conversations with the Prime Minister and the Chancellor that is exactly where their heart is as well. And in fact,
but it's not where the policy is.
Well, actually, if you look at
the highest tax take in decades.
Well, if you look at the policies that we've delivered in government, actually, we massively increased the personal allowance, taking millions of people out of tax altogether and delivering a record cut to to the taxes for the lowest paid. Now, clearly,
but people don't trust you on taxes. It's here in black and white.
Well, I haven't had a chance, sadly, to read the detail of that polling. But what people will be able to do is judge us by our record, the record that
which is raising taxes,
which we've already delivered on in terms of increasing the personal allowance. Of course, we took a difficult decision. It's not one that I wanted to take or anyone else wanted to take. None of us want to increase taxes. But we did it to get the funding for the NHS as we come out of the COVID crisis. We could have just pretended that you get the money out of thin air, which would have meant further increasing borrowing, further adding to burdens for our children and grandchildren. But in accordance with basic Conservative principles of sound money, we took that difficult choice. But that does not indicate some shift in terms of the direction of the Conservative Party.
Oliver Dowden, you have to go. Who are you going to next on your busy media round?
I think I'm off to LBC, and they'll be very grumpy with you for keeping me for so long.
Important on the record that you do LBC after Times Radio, though. Thank you for making that point. Oliver Dowden.
You're all my favourites.
We'll take that too.